Hello, my name is Rashmi from the Department of Criminology, Raksha Shakti University, Ahmedabad, Gujarat. The title of the module is Cyber Terrorism. The objectives of the module are: number 1, to understand the definition of cyber terrorism; number 2, to explore the threat and also why cyber terrorism is chosen by terrorists; number 3, to get an overview of various forms of cyber terrorism; number 4, to recognize some of the security measures to fight cyber terrorism. This module assumes that students have a prior knowledge of terrorism, computer networks and system, IT Act, Internet and information. The threat proposed by cyber terrorism has grabbed headlines and the attention of politicians, security experts and the public. The potential threat posed by cyber terrorism has provoked considerable alarm. Numerous security experts, politicians and others have publicized the danger of cyber terrorists hacking into government and private computer systems and crippling the military, financial and service sectors of advanced economies. Psychological, political and economic forces have combined to promote the fear of cyber terrorism. From a psychological perspective, two of the greatest fears of modern time are combined in the term cyber terrorism. The fear of random, violent victimization blends well with the distrust and outright fear of computer technology. Even before 9/11, a number of exercises identified apparent vulnerabilities in the computer networks of the US military and energy sectors. After 9/11, the security and terrorism discourse soon featured cyber terrorism prominently, promoted by interested actors from the political, business and security circles. Cyber terrorism is, to be sure, an attractive option for modern terrorists who value its anonymity, its potential to inflict massive damage, its psychological impact and its media appeal. The growing dependence of our societies on information technologies has created a new form of vulnerability, giving terrorists the chance to approach targets that would otherwise be utterly inaccessible, such as national defense systems and air traffic control systems. The more technologically developed a country is, the more vulnerable it becomes to cyber attacks against its infrastructure. The roots of the notion of cyber terrorism can be traced back to the early 1990s, when the rapid growth in the internet use and the debate on the emerging information society sparked several studies on the potential risks faced by the highly networked, highly tech-dependent United States. There have been several stumbling blocks to creating a clear and consistent definition of the term cyber terrorism. First, as just noted, much of the discussion of cyber terrorism has been conducted in the popular media, where journalists typically strive for drama and sensation rather than for good operational definitions of new terms. Second, it has been especially common when dealing with computers to coin new words simply by placing the word cyber or computer or information before another word. Thus, an entire arsenal of words, cybercrime, infowar, net war, cyber terrorism, cyber harassment, virtual warfare, digital terrorism, cyber tactics, computer warfare, cyber attack and cyber break-ins is used to describe what some military and political strategists describe as the new terrorism of our times. Fortunately, some efforts have been made to introduce greater semantic precision. Most notably, Dorothy Denning, a professor of computer science, has put forward an admirably unambiguous definition in numerous articles and in her testimony on the subject before the House Armed Services Committee in May 2000. Cyberterrorism is the convergence of cyberspace and terrorism. It refers to unlawful attacks and threats of attacks against computers, networks, and the information stored therein when done to intimidate or coerce a government or its people in furtherance of political or social objectives. Further, to qualify as cyber terrorism, an attack should result in violence against persons or property, or at least cause enough harm to generate fear. Attacks that lead to death or bodily injury, explosions, or severe economic loss would be examples. Serious attacks against critical infrastructure could be acts of cyber terrorism, depending on their impact. Attacks that disrupt non-essential services or that are mainly a costly nuisance would not, considering the fact that the terrorists have limited funds. Cyber attacks are increasingly attractive because their implementation requires a smaller number of people and certainly smaller funds. Another advantage of cyber attacks is that they allow terrorists to remain unknown because they can be very far from the place where the act of terrorism is committed. Unlike the terrorists that place their camps in countries with weak governance, cyber terrorists can store anywhere and remain anonymous. The new information technologies, that is IT, and the internet are more often used by terrorist organizations in conducting of their plans to raise the financial funds, distribute their propaganda, and secure communications. The terrorist organizations also use the internet to reach out their audience without need to use other media such as radio, television, or holding various press conferences. Web pages are used as a way to highlight injustice and to seek support for, as they call, political prisoners which are illegally captured. Typical web pages will not display any information related to the violent activities and will usually claim to be left with no other choice but to resort to violence. They claim to be persecuted, that their leaders have been targets of assassination, and their supporters are massacred. They use this tactic to give impression that they are weak and to present themselves as outsiders. This public performance is a very easy way to recruit supporters and members. Besides propaganda on the terrorist organizations' websites can often be found content and instructions on how to make explosives and chemical weapons. This allows them to identify the most common users that they can have sympathy for their cause, and because of that, this is an effective method for recruiting. Information security is of great importance to many organizations, including the terrorists. The reason for this primarily lies in their malicious activities, so it is obvious that they will be faced with a well-equipped government, security forces, and coalition forces that can easily reveal their intentions through the interception of communication using sophisticated monitoring equipment. The terrorists use cyberspace to cause uncertainty. They, for their own reasons, are struggling against state authorities and governments and use all available means to achieve their own aim. Cyber attacks occur in two forms. One, used to attack data, and others focus on control systems. Data theft and destruction leads to services sabotage, and this is the most common form of internet and computer attacks. The attacks focused on the control systems are used to disable or manipulate the physical infrastructure. For example, you can perform remote power supply networks, railway and water supplies in order to achieve a negative opinion on larger geographic areas. This is accomplished by sending data over the internet or by penetrating security systems. These weak spots in the system were used in the incident in Australia that occurred in March 2000, where disgruntled employee who failed to provide full-time employment used the internet to slip 1 million liters of unprocessed sewage into the river and coastal waters in Queensland. In fact, after 44 unsuccessful tries, the 45th was successful. The first 44 trials were not detected at all. This module will also look at some of the strategies to combat cyber terrorism. Cybersecurity is an essential component of such strategies. The goal is not only counter-terrorism in all its forms and manifestations on the internet, but also with more active approach to use the internet as a tool for countering the spread of terrorism. India has also brought its own decree to protect against terrorism, enabling authorities to apprehend, suspect without trial, to conduct surveillance and to seize money and property of suspected terrorists, and in some cases to implement the death penalty. There should be also a balance between the provision of specific interest to a particular organization or government and more general requirements for the benefit of all legitimate users to be formed an international communications and technological environment that will be unfriendly, oriented to the ambitions of cyber terrorists and extremists. Cyber criminals and hackers. After completing this module, you will be able to understand the definition of cyber terrorism, to explore the threat and also why cyber terrorism is chosen by terrorist organizations, to get an overview of various forms of cyber terrorism, and to understand the concept of cyber terrorism in India. Lastly, you will also explore some of the strategies and security measures to fight cyber terrorism. With the increased use of digital communications, the risk of committing acts of terror over the internet has also posed a serious problem in the past few years. Cyber terrorism involves the use of internet as a venue to inflict grave hurt on the rest of the humanity. These acts can be as catastrophic as acts of conventional terrorism. Cyber terrorism brings two significant modern fears: the fear of technology and the fear of terrorism. Both are considered to be significant unknowns. Cyber terrorism increases with the vast variety of potential targets and the lack of effective safeguard measures to address the issue. What defines cyber terrorism? The term cyber terror was coined by Barry Collin in the 1980s to describe the dynamic transcendence of terrorism from the physical to the virtual realm, and the intersection of these two worlds. The Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, has defined cyberterrorism as the use of computer network tools to shut down critical national infrastructures such as energy, transportation, or government operations, or to coerce or intimidate a government or civilian population. Rollins and Wilson argue that there are two views to define cyberterrorism. Number one, effect space, which defines the effects of cyberterrorism, capable of being destructive as well as strong enough to generate fear as much as an act of traditional terrorism. Number two, intent-based refers to the intention behind the act of cyberterrorism, which can be politically motivated to coerce or intimidate a government or people to further a political objective. Over the past years, the sophistication and delivery of cyber attacks have also increased. Such attacks are a threat to the international peace and security. These attacks can range from attacking the computer system of a nation which might not have security, firewalls, or antivirus software to protect them, and they can be spread in almost any part of the world. The main aim of cyber terrorists today is to disable critical computer infrastructure through cyber attacks, which furthers the terrorist group's ideology. These critical infrastructures include telecommunication, power and water supply, military information, and other emergency services. An attack to be qualified as cyber terrorism should result in violence against persons or property, or at least cause enough harm to generate fear amongst people. There are various ways that the internet can be used to cyber planning and organizational activities to secure tasks such as fundraising, intelligence, recruitment, and training. According to Conway, there are 5 core terrorist uses of the internet. Firstly, networking, financing, recruitment, information, supply, and information gathering. Terrorist groups are increasingly exploiting the computer technology to fulfill their objectives. Since these objectives are not easily traceable or not easily detected, terrorist groups try to accomplish their strategic goals on a more global as well as local level. For example, exploitation of the web by exiled political opposition groups sourcing from states such as Iraq, Iran, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. Broadcasting videos to communicate their revolutionary messages is also one of the favorite tools of some terrorist organizations. Cyber terrorism not only focuses on damaging systems but also aims for information gathering in furtherance to some political or ideological gains. There are 3 facets to cyber terrorism. Terrorists use computers as facilitators to their activities. Terrorists use computer as a weapon or a target. The attacks must be politically motivated and instill terror or fear amongst people. The nature of the threat. The effects of a cyber attack can have a great likelihood of endangering the lives of millions of people. Although it may not entail a more direct threat of violence than a traditional act of terrorism, however, the level of fear it produces can be very widespread. The attack can also be significant and severe, which can cause inconvenience to a lot of people. Cyberspace attacks must have a terrorist component in order to be called cyber terrorism. The effects of cyber terrorism are rippling and can lead to widespread panic. It can span across time and space. The disruption from such an attack can also be life-threatening. Terrorist organizations use the internet as a tool for propaganda purposes. Cyberterrorism could be executed in the form of computer viruses, worms, Trojan, hacking, and other malicious codes to cause harm to property or human lives. For example, a cyber attack can get control of a food manufacturer factory and alter the level of additives to poison the customers. A cyber attack can also get control of air traffic control system and bring down airplanes, thereby resulting in possible crash and loss of lives. Why cyberterrorism? There are several reasons as to why cyberterrorism is chosen by modern terrorists. It is cheaper than traditional terrorism methods. A computer and an internet connection is what a terrorist needs in order to carry out the operation. Since a cyber attack is not easily detected, so cyber terrorism is more anonymous than traditional terrorist methods. The real identity of the attacker is very hard to track down by security forces. The variety of potential targets is also enormous. A cyber terrorist could attack the computers and computer networks of governments and individuals. The attacker can find weaknesses in the system in order to exploit them. Cyber terrorism can be carried out from anywhere in the world. Because of this, very little investment is required to recruit people compared to traditional terrorist methods. It has the potential to affect a large number of people than conventional terrorism acts, thereby generating more fear amongst people. Forms of cyber terrorism. Cyber terrorism can take various forms. Some of them are privacy violation. Online privacy of an individual is very important. Cyber terrorists, through modern computer technology, invade the person's privacy and can subject the person to mental pain and distress and could inflict physical injury as well. An invasion of privacy is considered to be a tort. Data theft. Data theft is the act of copying and removing confidential information without authorization. This stolen information is then used to commit identity theft upon the unsuspecting persons whose data has been stolen. A single data theft can affect a large number of individual victims. The information stolen includes a person's name, addresses, usernames, passwords and PINs, credit card information, etc. Phishing. It is a type of scam. It is used to gain personal information for the purpose of identity theft. It has become an increasingly popular way of capturing personal data. It is also known as coding or brand spoofing. It uses email messages that look quite authentic, wherein the customers are asked to verify certain information such as account numbers and passwords. This ultimately results in financial losses and other fraudulent activity committed against them. Hacking. It involves breaking into a security system of a computer or private network for some illicit purpose. Cyber terrorists usually destroy, steal, or prevent authorized users from accessing the system. Hackers represent a great threat and can cause significant amount of disruption and damage to the world of information systems. Malware. A malware attack is a piece of malicious software which takes over a person's computer in order to spread the bug onto other people's devices and profiles. It can also infect a computer and turn it into a botnet which means the cyber terrorist can control the computer and use it to send it to malware to others. Spamming, it is when the internet is flooded with many copies of the same message which the cyber terrorist designs in such a way to make the victim spend money on counterfeit or fake goods. Most spam messages are commercial advertising and they target individual users with direct mail messages. Click fraud. It is an illegal practice where an individual, computer, program or generated script exploits online advertisers by repeatedly clicking on a pay-per-click advertisement to generate fraudulent charges. Denial of service attacks. A legitimate user from accessing information and data. The cyber terrorist targets the computer and its network connection, which then disables the user from accessing email, websites, online accounts or other services that rely on the affected computer. In India, cyber terrorism has also been crippling the nation's security. Specific and stringent laws have also been formulated to overcome the issue. Section 66F of the Information Technology Act 2000 deals with the offense of cyber terrorism and provides that any person with the intention to pose a threat to the unity, security and sovereignty of India or strike a terror in the persons through any of the following means are liable for stringent punishments. Number 1, attempting to enter or access a computer without authorization. Number 2, introducing a computer contaminant which is likely to cause death or injuries to persons or damage to property. Number 3, obtaining access to information, computer, database or data which is restricted. Number 4, obtaining access to restricted information and using that to cause injury or to the interest of the sovereignty, integrity and security of the country. India has faced attacks on the critical infrastructure which has brought in the threat of cyber terrorism. In early March of 2013, a group of suspected Chinese hackers breached the computers of India's top military organization, the Defense Research and Development Organization, that is DRDO, which was considered as one of the biggest security breaches in the country's history. A group called Pakistan Army has also hacked several Indian websites. Some notable instances of cyber terrorism. In the year 2014, hackers attacked Yahoo, where reportedly 500 million data of the users were hacked. The data stolen by the attackers included passwords, numbers, personal information, but no credit card data. There were similar other technical breaches such as MySpace, LinkedIn, and Adobe. In the year 2012, India faced one of the biggest cyber attacks where the hackers penetrated the email accounts of 12,000 people, which included high-level officials from DRDO, ITBP, Ministry of Home Affairs, and the Ministry of External Affairs. In 2011, 77 million of PlayStation Network and Sony Online Entertainment accounts were stolen by a group of unknown hackers. In the year 1998, a group of Tamil guerrillas attacked the Sri Lankan embassy and bombarded the system with over 800 emails a day over a period of 2 weeks period. This is considered as one of the first attacks by terrorists against a country's computer systems. Countering cyber terrorism. The concept of cyber terrorism has gained a lot of attention in the recent years. The threats from a cyber attack are widespread and will develop in the future if necessary measures are not taken. The internet system is exploited by cyber terrorists to disrupt or degrade the computer infrastructure by various modern techniques. There will be continuous rise of cyber crimes in coming years as well. The danger of cyber terrorism needs efforts on a strategic level to raise the security of the computer networks. Strategic plans should focus on the well-being of the nation and its citizens. Stringent laws should be passed for cyber crimes which might change the mindset of the cyber terrorists. Security practices by the nations should be modified or improved. Awareness among the general public should also be prioritized so that they are up to date with the latest threats and incidents related to cybercrime, which can help in improving the security of their system. Alliances in the national as well as in the international level can also help to fight cyber terrorism. Since the world is increasingly getting dependent on computer-based technology and the internet, cyber terrorism has become a real threat. Rapid advancements in the world of information technology have led to a rise in cyber crimes. Cyber terrorists are just a few mouse clicks away to compromise a wide range of important information and database. They have the capacity to cause massive destruction and disruption through the use of computers. Focus should be on improving the security practices of various computer networks and systems so that the internet is a secure and a more productive resource for the people to use. Thank you for watching. I hope you have found the module useful.